for clicking on the video. In this track, we talked about imposter syndrome, and we're joined by Matthew Sanders, who is the CEO of Humanity 2.0, and Ed Young, who is the CEO of Universal Health Screener. We talked about questions like, what even is imposter syndrome? And provocations like, no one is qualified. And this was just such a great, lovely conversation, and I know you're going to love it. So without further ado, here is the track. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Trek. The Trek is a Civics Unplugged series where community members participate in meaningful discussions on topics that are too often neglected when thinking about building the future. Through prompting questions and provocations, we venture together into complex but important conversations related to building the future and democracy. We understand that this work requires ongoing dialogue, but it's a journey worth trekking through. My name is Madison. I'm a high school senior from Verdigris, Oklahoma, joined by some of our community members and two special guests, which you will hear from in just a moment. And today we're talking about imposter syndrome. So when you see your name on the screen, go ahead and give an introduction and the 1 to 3 words you associate with the topic and why.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm 23 years old, currently in Pennsylvania. I think 2 words would be inadequate. I think when you experience imposter syndrome, that's you're feeling a lot of inadequacy. And then what was my second word? Oh, recurring.
Hi guys, my name is Angel. About to turn 19, first year at Yale. And I guess the words that I associate with imposter syndrome experienced every day, or every single day, either one. Very self-explanatory. I feel like everything is also extremely compounded being at home and online. And then just being forced to see everything that everyone has been doing, and seeing how productive people are being despite everything that's going on. It's like, oh, do I belong here? Should I be doing more? Yeah, definitely resonate with the inadequacy part, Julia.
Julia.
Wait, did you just remove a name?
Yes, I think they left. I don't see them yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Sure. So I think the 3 words I'd associate would be can be overcome, because just based on personal experience, I used to suffer from major imposter syndrome. But if you make dedicated efforts, then you can definitely overcome it.
Madison, who is the person that left? Can I message them?
A 2021 fellow.
What's the name?
I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's
AOUK? Ayuk?
I think it's like AOUF.
What?
Oh wait, that's their last name.
Yeah, I just messaged. It's all good. Matthew, what are your 3 words?
Matthew Sanders, CEO of Humanity 2.0. I'm pretty sure I'm on this because I'm the one person who doesn't know what this is, and so I'm meant to give my. Okay, I don't know what it is. So I think I'll wait to weigh in until I get a classical definition from one of these smarter people, and I suppose hopefully I'm not one of the imposters, but I guess I'll find out shortly.
So, hi, I am Ed Young, and the 3 words that I associate with imposter syndrome would be social media and esteem. You can separate those and join them together.
Yeah, I would say persistent and often in well, that's many words. Persistent. I want to say persistent because once you've gotten over being an imposter of one role, then you become an imposter of a different role.
Yeah, And I would say comparing for my first one, just because that's how it comes about when you're comparing yourself to other people, and then everyone experiences it. I guess it's kind of refreshing to think that everyone at one point in their life feels it, um, or experiences it. So like we're not all alone. Obviously, we're all talking about it now. So yeah, thank you all for sharing. We can go ahead and hop into the conversation. So does anyone have a question or provocation to get us started off with?
Yeah. What is it?
I can I can answer that question. I would say that to me, imposter syndrome is when you feel like you don't belong, and I guess as if your position in a certain space, I guess came about by fraudulent means. That might be a little too strong. But yeah, it's just when you definitely feel like you don't belong in comparison to other people who have supposedly done much more important or cooler, insert positive adjective here, thing in comparison to what you think that you've done.
Oh my God. Well, okay, then I'm definitely an imposter because I don't know how many times I've been invited to a black tie event and I'm like, no, I do not belong here. These are not my people. I don't. So yes, I've definitely experienced that one. Thank you very much, Angel. I get it. And I feel convicted.
Sure. I guess I'll just add that it's really interesting how I mean, Among Us is a pretty big phenomena, and we have imposters in that game, and it's basically like this one person who doesn't belong on the spaceship, and so this is kind of similar. You feel like everybody else is a real crewmate, and you're the one person who isn't supposed to be on the spaceship, and you're somehow less than the others. And yeah, that's just one way of thinking about imposter syndrome. Maybe I've just been playing too much Among Us recently, but
Anyone have anything else to add or another question or provocation they want to pose?
Yeah, can I ask you a question? Wouldn't anyone from a major city feel like, I mean, I'm from Toronto and I mean, I guess people there, there's tribes, but I never really felt like I didn't even know who my neighbors were. So what's the difference between like being in a place where you don't know anybody and you're just kind of, or you're working there, but you're not actually from there and you're just kind of doing your thing and being an imposter?
Well, okay, so I think that's different, and that's you don't feel that you're a part of that community or that tribe. Imposter syndrome is feeling that you are in a position that is not warranted, that for some reason or other, you have been able to trick people into believing that you are competent.
You're hustling. So that's derogatory way of saying it.
But a hustler knows that they're hustling.
Okay.
Imposter syndrome is more the fear of being found out for being inadequate. Now, let me. So I'm of Generation X, and I don't know that we like Madison. You said everybody feels that everybody has it, and that's a fascinating statement to me because my generation, I don't think we would say that think that everybody has that. But it's but in a different way, not that everybody didn't feel that at points in time they were in positions that they weren't comfortable being in or what have you. But what we never experienced, and the reason I said social media, is the generations behind who have grown up with this social media reality. And the millennials are special because they're that bridge. So they had a blend of the both. So they're just totally messed up. But that you have people putting forward only their best and only these images that are generally not real. We grew up only experiencing that sporadically in in high school and cliques and things like that. But these generations are presented with it in high school and then on everything they look at in the world globally. Everybody's putting these images out that are not real. And so it's a outside reinforcing phenomenon that's occurring. And so, I mean, for instance, one of my mentors told me when I was very young, and I am so grateful for having this person, and it said, never take a job that you know you can do. And I'm like, what? That you, Matthew, said, and you think about that, never take a job that you know you can do, not to take one frivolously, but know that you're competent and that you will figure out and be encouraged and capable of working through and being the best that that job requires. Have confidence in your skills. Have confidence that you can grok it or whatever it need be. So Angel, you say, do I belong here? It's an unequivocal yes. You know why you belong there? Because you're there. That's why you belong there. You're not fooling anybody. You're there. You belong. It's that simple. People overthink this stuff.
So I'm jumping into this kind of late. I'm sorry, I just got here.
Yeah,
And I think that's really interesting. I think my word association would have been inspiration, not competition. And I think that kind of I guess when I think about being in a place where you are unfamiliar and a place where you are experiencing imposter syndrome, like I feel like so much of what imposter syndrome is kind of the feeling that you need to live up to a certain expectation of how you should show up in a space, and you are comparing yourself either to others or to what society expects of you. Whereas kind of being in a space that is unfamiliar to you is, I don't know, almost easier to navigate if you trust yourself to do so.
I will tell you, maybe I have a perspective that's a little bit, because I have a child, right? I had a kid, he's 21 now. And I will tell you, I don't know that anybody who has a child feels confident having that child. I begged them to let me stay in the hospital another night with my wife and baby. It was like, and my wife's a doctor, it's it just was crazy. But that was the one point in life where I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know. I'm not confident. I'm totally inadequate for this or whatever. But look, people have kids and they grow up and, here we are. And so maybe you get a different perspective after that life experience, which is so critical. And I don't know. But
Can someone please explain to me why imposter syndrome is such a big deal? It seems pretty dang benign to me. I mean, I feel awkward. So why?
Right.
Why is this a bloody syndrome? That's really scary.
I can jump in. This week has been extremely traumatic, and it's really exposed this kind of toxic academia culture in academia that has so long been neglected because everyone, like Ashley said, is trying to live up to this supposed expectation of what it means to be a Yale student, or to go to the Ivy League, right? I think imposter syndrome is so dangerous because, at least for my generation and for a lot of people here, everyone has it. And when it's not acknowledged, it's it's kind of you self-gaslighting, and it can erupt into something that's extremely dangerous. For one of my friends, it was, or not my friends, but one of my peers, it was suicide, trigger warning. For other people, it could manifest in other more devastating ways. I think the problem with imposter syndrome is, once again, the fact that it's not acknowledged enough. And so everyone thinks that everyone is doing completely fine. And that's not true, especially in the middle of a pandemic and in the middle of such crushing social isolation. Yeah, it's weird feeling like the odd one out when you see so many people living their best lives, despite everything going on.
Can I jump in here? I just wanted to mention that when I first learned about imposter syndrome, and I had exactly the same attitude. I was like, is this even a thing? How can this actually affect a person? Obviously, you've reached the place you are by doing work on your own. And yeah, I just didn't take it that seriously. But then last year, in the summer of last year, I ran this initiative, and then I just started off small, but it grew kind of big, and we started getting all these requests from all these people in the media. They wanted to interview us and stuff. And I was like, wait, I didn't really do anything. I didn't do anything here, and this just grew like through external forces. And I didn't even play a role. I don't deserve to be interviewed. I don't deserve to talk about this. And it's just I haven't talked about it. I didn't talk about it. I didn't talk about it with like my friends or my family or anybody. And I guess I just quietly got over it a few months ago. But yeah, it's just like that attitude is kind of, I guess unless you experience it, you can't really relate. But it's important to be able to and be empathetic if someone approaches you to kind of help them out.
Can I say
Something.
something?
Yeah.
So-
Go ahead.
Thank you for sharing that, because so you just said, let me run through. It's Rushank. You built something, or you started something, and it grew, and it became substantial, and people looked to you to interview you, to find out how you did it, what you did. Your understanding is you didn't really do anything that great. It was just circumstances that were more important relative to the success of what you had started. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is what I thought when I first.
Okay. So can I point something out to you? And see, this is an interesting thing. You did do it. What you were able to do was to not mess up the circumstances that surrounded you. You were wise enough and cognizant enough to do the things that needed to be done for that to realize its potential. That is still doing something. Most of the times in our lives, not messing up is the thing that we're supposed to do. It's not because we're great. I mean, I part of me wonders if there's not society pushing, and you see people who are truly humble, who are don't want to be arrogant. It's not saying that you're great and that's the reason you're in the position you are. It's saying that you took advantage of the circumstances around you in the best possible, or one of the best possible ways. And that's not building yourself up. That's just acknowledging that's what life is. And it's not arrogant to say, hey, I belong here. I did this, but you didn't do it. You just didn't mess it up. That's, I don't know. There's so much pressure out there, collective pressure through social media, all of these images and everything, where it's just, you all, I'm sitting here, I'm back on a trek because I am so impressed by you young people. This is just joyous to me. You all are incredible. The fact that you're just doing this, it's amazing. Accept that. That's okay to say, we're doing pretty well. Accept it. That's not arrogance. That's acknowledgement.
And I love that you bring that up, because I feel like how I've always thought of it is that like you're either not confident or you're just like very cocky, and then it's like it's hard to walk a balance.
It's not
And
binary, right?
yeah, I know, and I think that someone who helped me realize that was like Gary, because we were having a conversation with like Julia and Ashley the other day, and it's like, what is Gary? He's not like confident or cocky. Oh, he's like comfortable. And so I mean that's just like something that I realized recently too. So I appreciate you calling that out.
And look at Matthew. Like, that's what I love about Matthew. Matthew's doing amazing stuff. He could be arrogant and like, yeah, I'm getting into like you hear him. I get invited to these black tie things. The Pope's like, what's up, Matthew? It's like, but he just takes it in stride because this is what he's been called to do, and he's doing it. And he's
Yes. Yeah, someone pulls strings, and you just kind of have to snap your heels together. But I just want to. What is the opposite of imposter syndrome? And I see you may have hinted at it. Extreme entitlement, where you belong here, right? Because you are so great.
Probably.
Is that it? Okay. I mean, the funny thing about it is, I mean, I guess depending on where you're raised and what value system you adopt to, but the spirit of humility is, I mean, everyone loves people that roll through life humble, never expecting great things to happen. They just do what they need to do. And sometimes that results in accolades and stuff, but it's never about that. It's never for that. Right. And I think there's a difference between, um, feeling like you're fundamentally don't deserve something, right? And operating with a spirit of humility, not expecting results or acknowledgement, stuff like that. And I think in my own life, I think the only thing that helps me keep my own sanity is just not reflecting upon whether I deserve it or not. This is the task before me, and for whatever reason, someone's seen fit to put the task before me, and I'll apply my gifts best that I can to see it done. And so to me, it's just a question of duty. It's not a question of I'm not doing it because it'll help me level up my social capital and stuff. And I think if you're approaching problems in that way, that's you're gonna be it's gonna trap you in a really vicious and destructive cycle because it'll never be enough. There's no ceiling on that, right? In the end, you have to ask yourself, if that's all you're living for, when you put your pillows in night, you're ever afraid when you look back that all you ever did was just level up your social capital? But did you ever do anything for yourself that made you feel? Anyways.
Yeah, is it okay if I mention something?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. I guess I just got this thought in my mind, but maybe it also depends on the culture you grew up with, because I don't know if it's the case for other cultures too, but at least in India, it's like you always try to be like not arrogant at all. So that kind of translates to being underconfident and like not being sure that you deserve this just because you've been taught your whole life to not like be overconfident. And I guess that results in being less like not acknowledging that what you've done is at the level that you think it is. So yeah, that might play a factor, and obviously it's up to the individual to kind of address it. And but yeah, just a point I thought I'd mention.
Cool. Any other questions or provocations? If not, I think I have one. So this is kind of like along the lines of something that I mentioned earlier, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. No one is qualified.
Correct.
I don't know. I don't know if that's it's. I mean, I guess it depends on what you define as qualified. I mean, someone knows how to put a nail into a piece of wood, and they know how to swing a hammer. Does that mean I'm qualified to hammer nails? I think most people would say yeah, but I guess it depends how you splice it, right?
Right. Is there just one way to put a nail into that piece of wood? And so, what is qualified? There are many different ways to do these different things. And so, yeah, that I think maybe there must be something in the world that there's only one way to do it. But, when you say qualified, what does that mean? I don't know. I think I look at the outcome. One of the things with being a CEO that's challenging is no one's going to do it exactly the way you want it done. So if you don't acknowledge that, you will micromanage, but you have to let it go and delegate appropriately and let your people do what they're able to do and look at the outcome, look at the results. And it may not be it's never going to be exactly how you would do it. It may be better. Ideally, if you get the right people, you always want people who are better than you, and you're going to have the positive result and get the growth and get the collective reinforcement and confidence that you want to build in your organization. So that's where I think you're right. Qualified is not this, it's not a binary term. It's this is right, this is wrong. There are many different ways to be qualified. And so when no one is qualified in and of itself, but can they do it? Can they get it done? Yes.
I mean, I guess when I think about being qualified, it's that your U-shaped hole lines up with what needs to be done. And I think like part of feeling imposter syndrome is if you don't know yourself well enough to know what you can meaningfully contribute to.
Yeah, maybe it's because we've been in the working world for so long. I guess when you're young and you guys are in university, that qualified thing, the idea that you have to pass a test in order to get a piece of paper, and when you get the piece of paper, I guess you're not qualified in that thing, is something that's like really, it's part of your life. It's a big deal. It's a lot of pressure, right? You want to make sure you meet that standard and get that qualification. When you get into the world, I mean, Elon Musk and other prominent people have talked about this. Nobody cares what piece of paper you have on your wall. What they care about is you get the job done. So I guess that's one of the reasons why I'm sure there was a time in my life I was really worried about what I could put on my LinkedIn, reference my qualifications. Now I care more about just making sure the accomplishments are there.
That's a great point, Matthew. When, and I didn't think we've been in the working world, and it's because think about it, you get your degree from university and then you apply for jobs and they say, well, you're not qualified for this. But doesn't the degree say that you're qualified? So it's a mixed message at times that you're dealing with at the beginning of a career. And that's interesting. I had not thought about that.
Yeah, and how many of you guys are actually in programs that qualify you like in some actual way? I mean, I guess engineers have that, right? But arts and science students, what the heck are we qualified to do when we get out?
Right.
Read and write, I guess. That's something.
Read, write, arithmetic. Read, write.
Like, is the qualification thing is that something you guys feel a lot of pressure about, or is it just something you don't really sweat? This is for the Gen Zers, not the millennials or Gen Xers on the call.
I can jump in. I don't really think for me, at least right now, it's not necessarily about the quality. Okay, but then it all goes back to how you define qualification, Like if you define qualification based on grades, then yeah, I guess I'm kind of worried about that. I think what I'm truly worried about is just how I compare, which is really bad. Comparison is the root of all evil, and I acknowledge that 100%. But well, it takes a little bit more work to get over that than just acknowledgement. But I think what I'm really worried about, and what a lot of people are really worried about, is how they compare to other students or people in their situation, like in their direct vicinity. Yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's about like the qualification itself. It's just like, how am I doing compared to my neighbor?
Well, what's behind that? I'm curious about that to hear you guys. So why? Like, why does it's fascinating. Like, why would someone else's where they're at and whatever? Why would that matter to you? Is it a finite thing because you're going to compete for something that you greatly value and they may have an edge on you? Where does it come from, you think?
That's a really good question. And I guess the best way that I can answer it is you literally okay, not to get like philosophical, but when you look at another person, right, you see yourselves in them, right? You see the image that they project out into the world, and you notice things about them that you might want to adopt for your own self, right? I don't know if that makes sense. So when you see someone who's doing let me not say objectively, subjectively, in your own opinion, better than you, because once again, they're projecting this like idealized version of themselves, whether that be in person or on social media, like Ed mentioned. You start comparing yourself to them because it's like, oh, why am I not living up to the standards that they're living up to? You're supposedly supposed to be in the same environment under the same conditions, and they're supposedly thriving, apparently, more than you're doing. So it's like there's this disconnect, like this cognitive dissonance. Like I'm here, they're there, but we're supposed to be on the same playing field. So what am I doing wrong? And I think that's where the root of imposter syndrome starts to grow. But that could just be for me. I feel like talking to people this week, it's very similar. But yeah, I think at least where I am right now, my life stage, imposter syndrome is definitely rooted from that, I guess, like mutual recognition.
Building off that, I think school is literally one of the most toxic places that young people can grow up in. I mean, like, as young people, we are all trying to figure out how to orient ourselves around each other, right, and around the world. But like, schools literally train us to orient. But schools literally train us to orient ourselves, around like other people's qualifications. Like that's the first thing that we learn about other people. Like, I mean, there are literally people in my school who like I like might not have seen in 6 months, and the first question they ask me is like the number of AP classes I'm taking this year. Like it's sad that we have been reduced to our qualifications, and so when we try to orient ourselves around other people, we naturally orient around qualifications.
Ooh, that's good. I get it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So the school is actually setting qualifications, well, benchmarks, whatever things that you have to achieve. So it's not about like you walk in, you discern your gifts and skills and decide how to hone them, right? So that you can add value to the world. It's not that self-explore. They're literally coming in saying, you got to be here, right? And you gotta tick these boxes in order to achieve, if you want to advance. It's not about you self-actualizing your gifts and abilities so you can make an impact. It's weird. Okay. That does suck. And now that you remind me about that, Ashley, yes, I was pissed about that in school and I didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much of how it's slowly changing, but very slowly. So much of how firms have historically hired people is based on their class rank or their things that are very hierarchical by nature. How many internships did they get at top firms that are like by definition have a limited number of slots? I just remember how much pressure I felt to get like something like a Google internship in college, and how like you almost didn't want to brag about it too much. Well, you almost didn't want to brag about it at all, actually, because people would give you like shade, like people would like be jealous because it's not like a false scarcity mentality. It's like actually there's scarcity because the game is designed to only like really serve a small number of people or force people to like to be at the top of some hierarchy.
But to think that, and that, like to Matthew's point, his question, he said, do you think that basically saying, tell me if I'm wrong, Matthew, are you looking at this as a zero-sum game? It's not. Like we had a rule in our house with my son. The one thing he could never say when he would talk about his grades or a test or anything is what anybody else did. It was always about you performing based on you. You're competing with only yourself, not other people. That was the rule. He knows. That's like, only think about doing the best that you can do. It
Yeah,
doesn't
Angel, to your point, I'll share something personal. I remember I was actually put in learning disabled class, I think when I was in grade 5, because I was hyperactive and kind of bored in school. So I actually was diagnosed with a learning disability, reading, writing, comprehension. So I was put in this like special ed class all the way up to like, I think it was all through high school. And well, I think my senior year, I realized I wasn't dumb. I was just really bored. And then I realized if I didn't get good grades, I wouldn't get to university. So I pivoted and got honors and got into the school I wanted to. But for the longest time, I actually thought I was learning disabled. And so I just didn't think about it. They told me college, technical college, that's what you should aim for. That's kind of what I said. Okay, I guess that's what I'm going to be doing. Later on, my mentality changed on that, but that was a pure thing of, I just wasn't interested. So they just figured because I wasn't meeting the qualifications, it must mean he's not capable of meeting the qualifications, not that he was disinterested or lacked motivation.
Yeah, and I think they introduced this this paradigm of the qualification really early on, and that's extremely toxic. Like, I remember one of the last treks that I went to on education, I don't remember. We talked about how kids from very early on are separated into different programs. So you're evaluated, and then based on what arbitrary score that you meet, you're placed into either the talented and gifted program or just like comprehensive, which is in and of itself really, like, excuse my language, but like fucked up, because learning is not linear, and it isn't the same across different minds, different children. So the fact that, you know, from a very young age, we were like, oh, we're not in tech, then I guess, like, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, we're sowing the seeds of, I guess, just denial in one's own capabilities. And I think that also has helped to, I guess, like, create this phenomenon of the imposter.
I also think like when I experience this, it's a little different than like what Angel was saying in terms of comparison. Like I don't really compare, but I think I get most worried about like if there's going to be criticism or like exposure of me not being qualified like in an area. Like I feel that more than comparison. And it just like makes me wonder, yeah, like if I'm passionate about something or want to start a conversation in a certain space, like am I the one to do that? Is someone going to be like, why are you the one doing this? That's like how I experience it more, which is a little different. But
Oh, amen to that. I mean, that is like, that's life. I'm telling you. I mean, just, you know, whenever, especially if you're the youngest person in the room, it's constant, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're there having to first explain or justify why you're there. I remember always having to wear suits to work, and I felt like I had to, and I had to look good, right? Because I felt like if I, you know, yeah, I'm young, you know, and whatever else, but if I look the part, right, maybe I'll just blend in, you know, and they'll forget that I'm there, and you know, and now I rock around in fleeces and hoodies.
Yeah. Love it. But I'll just also add to that. Like, I think like that happens to me often, but like I'm able to talk myself out of it. Cause like, other than the thought of like mortality, which is obviously helps you get out of certain mindsets, is like just the if not you, then who mindset, because maybe you're not the one to really like help a certain conversation or space like grow exponentially, but like if there's no one starting conversation about it, like you can look at those comparisons that you make instead as connections to help you build off of this thing that you may feel inadequate of. So it's like you can still be involved and look at, again, those people you're comparing yourself to as people who can help you get better within those spaces, I guess.
Okay, if no one has anything else to add, we can go ahead and hop into reflection.
So just on the note of what Julia said, for anything that's like really transformative, it's like by definition, no one's ever done it. So you can have any. The thing is, what I've realized is that you can rationalize not doing stuff so easily. There's always a reason to not do something that's like awesome. So just think about that, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I'm gonna copy the notes here and send them in the chat to you all, and then I can get us started while you all are thinking about your reflections. So obviously, very good conversation. I think a conversation that we didn't have is maybe like the partial validity of imposter syndrome. Sometimes I feel like maybe sometimes there is validity in it, but it could, and that could be taken like in a number of ways. Like it could hinder your ability to function, but in other ways it could like I don't know, if used in the correct ways, it could like make you really want to improve. And I think that I've experienced both of those before. So I think that was an interesting like point that we didn't explore.
Does that go back to what I was saying, the mentor telling me never take a job that you're fully confident you can do.
Yeah.
And then you're embracing your can you have imposter syndrome if you've embraced it knowing that you weren't qualified to do it at the point when you took it? And I think about that because I've tried to embrace that. That's how I've grown my companies and things. I can't do this. I didn't know how to code. I taught myself to code and I would build stuff. I know I don't know what I'm doing. I'm fully aware of it and embrace it, but I have confidence that I can figure it out, or even better, find the people that I need to help me and be open about my inadequacy. Like there's no I think Matthew, I have no problem saying I don't understand that. I don't get that. Like it's not embarrassing to not know something. That's how we learn. But just be open about not knowing. Are we just worried about, is imposter syndrome worrying so much about being found out when we should just reveal our inadequacies, reveal where we know we're not capable? Why are we so embarrassed about that? I like learning. That means I don't know things.
No one else has a reflection.
Well, I mean, to Gary's point, just anyone who's been an entrepreneur would acknowledge that they may know how to do one thing that was necessary to start the business, but there's 50 different things that are required, and you end up having to do 40 of those things yourself when you're getting started, right? Unless you take money from a VC, but I'm not gonna hate on that. If you've ever had to build something from scratch, and so I mean, listen, man, anything that's significant in our history is started with someone, taking a risk, and as Ed said, trusting and having confidence in their abilities that they figure out as they went. And so, I mean, my thing would say the idea of being in a room and feeling like an imposter, yeah, like take a look at human history. That's anybody who decided to get on a ship and to a new place and start from scratch, right? I mean, what gives you right? Have you done that before? Have you been in a ship? Have you built something? No, but whatever situations demanded that you try something new because maybe you ain't making it back home. And so I think you just have to have confidence that you're a smart person, you have skills, and those skills, you may end up finding that they're better honed or better, they plug better into one particular area than another. But to not find out would be a real tragedy, because the only way to really grow is to experiment and to fail, and that brings clarity and insight and can help you find your path.
Reflecting on Ed's point, I really love that. I think like naturally human beings are mutualistic. We love community, but the way the world is set up right now, it's just everything is so hyper individualistic, and I feel like imposter syndrome is like the toxic manifestation of like that natural need for, I guess, community and for recognition, etc. And I just wish we could find a way to alter the system so that we're encouraged to seek help, and not, I guess, like internally ashamed of it because I guess like we should know and we should be able to do everything ourselves. But yeah, I think I've internalized that like needing to do everything myself narrative. So I think I'm going to try to actively deconstruct that because it's not good. So thank you for that, Ed.
Yeah, on that point, this can be my reflection. It's been a multi-year process of me shifting away from a whole way of doing things where imposter syndrome is not like a constant, I guess, impediment to my own flourishing. And it's not just a matter of like reframing, like just trying to ignore imposter syndrome. It's like it's actually just having a totally different way of operating in life. And I think you're inevitably going to be having imposter syndrome if you're just at a corporation that has like a very strict hierarchy and very competitive, and like, you know, 10% gets fired every year, and you know, that sort of environment. So you got to really think about your environment, overall life path. And unfortunately, we're in the early stages of developing alternative like life paths that where where that process that Matthew was describing of education being the sort of you realizing your potential instead of just comparing yourself to other people, right? A lot of things have to change, right? It can't, because it's not just like the education system. It's not just like your high school or college has to change. It's like the pathways after college have to also align with, have to be conducive to not producing this imposter syndrome.
I think, Gary, you nailed it. That's like you're saying, the corporate structure is 10% after quarterly reviews get released, things like that. That's not giving you, this is, you just opened my, the system itself has been formulated to reinforce imposter syndrome, because the right way to do things, and this is from millennia of human experience, you look in Proverbs, you look in what does a wise person do? They seek wise counselors, which means you don't know everything. It's okay to acknowledge that, but the corporate structure, if 10%, you don't want to be the one who's saying, I don't know. So it's not reinforcing what humans have figured out is healthy. We're creating a collective mental condition that is adverse to human flourishing.
Yeah, and I think the system is like, it is clear to every young person. I mean, like, especially young people in school right now, that the system is broken and actively disincentivizing our own flourishing. I think most young people would agree with that. I guess I really resonated with what Matthew said about, like, you cannot accomplish anything if you don't have confidence in your own abilities. I feel like when it comes to imposter syndrome, like, it can be really easy to like just blame it all on the system. And I think, like, yes, the system definitely plays into exacerbating, like, people feeling like there's so much competition and that they're not like good enough. Um, but I also feel like if we want to move past the system, and especially as we're entering like this liminal space where like we want to build new systems, like, it really requires people to I don't know, kind of look inside first and gain a better understanding of their U-shaped hole and gain the confidence that they need to actually build new systems. Because otherwise, I think we will just all be victims of the systems that currently exist, and we will never move forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to add on terms of the other points. So, like, echoing a lot of what people said, I also really like what Ed was saying about kind of having confidence in the unknown, because yes, you can do the fake it till you make it, and that is also a very strong route, but like being able to say that you do not know something helps you help someone else be more willing to give you like full knowledge on something, and so you can be better rounded in that area rather than kind of feeding into your imposter syndrome, trying to pretend that you don't know something. And then there's a lot of like left out points in your learning process, I guess. I don't know how you're going to word this, Madison, sorry. But yeah, I just really liked Ed's point about that.
Okay. Thank you all for sharing. Since it was no one's first trek, so I'm not going to ask that question, but does anyone have any reflections overall? Matthew, did you learn something?
Yes, thank you very much for humoring me, everybody.
Great. Well, it was awesome to have you on as always. And you're always welcome back. And I will see you later. Bye.
Where something so sacred is so widespread and like widely experienced, is something that like just rekindles that idea of like being conscious and having that humanity. And like when I think of kind of going back, like when I think of small talk, I'm like, a lot of people see it as like a very surface level thing. But like if it could be something as widespread and common, while also having the same depth, I think that that's something that like, it's just like it's something that's cool to think about.
Kind of going off of that too, I wasn't thinking about dialogue as sacred in the same way. I was thinking more about it as just like talking, having a conversation. But so because we've been talking about that, it's made me realize that like the quality of the dialogue is better than the quantity of it, because I have conversations with like my dad all the time, and I always considered them like, oh, it's a dialogue, but I'm rethinking it. I'm like, no, that was a debate. That was just a 3-hour long debate between us, and we didn't actually get very far because both of us were getting kind of frustrated with the other person. But now trying to engage in a conversation where it's not someone just preaching or anything, where it's actually trying to learn about the other person, what they think, and grow from it.
Sam, what that made me think of was how we talked about sharing, how a lot of dialogues are just sharing monologues. And how can we, why would we expect people to be good at dialogue if what they're seeing on like CNN or Fox News is monologue, just like I'm a monologue here. No, I'm gonna monologue as like it's like you're using like monologues as like a baseball bat. You're like no, like you're like attacking someone. Yet we're told that this is what civic dialogue is. You get two enemies on both sides. That's how we build the future.
And on the note of focusing on like building the future, I think that again, dialogue is one of those tools. I'll circle back to like my initial provocation. Dialogue is one of those tools that is always relevant. And I find myself applying the principles of dialogue to like how I engage in all work. And the idea of like finite versus infinite conversations makes me think about the fact that like whatever we're building is a infinite process. And so right now we're in the stage where we're treating it like a baseball bat and it's one thing to the next. But because it's infinite, we're also treating it like it's infinite, which is kind of what my biggest takeaway here also means, that like that spirit and enjoyment from learning and coming to realizations is just like promised throughout the process. So there's something beautiful in that. And I feel like that's just applicable to any work that's being done, or even any personal work that's being done.
I would just like to amplify what Chabu said. I think it's beautiful. One of the things I say to people, one of the ways of knowing if you've been in Dialogos is you'll find that it's permeating through your life and it's percolating between levels of your psyche. That's one of the ways retrospectively you can tell if you've been in Dialogos.
I love the way that we cooperate to keep the analogy of soccer, and I think that's the clue for dialogue, cooperation. If there is cooperation only by one side and there is not for the other, it's a monologue. I think that's why, because they were saying in the comment like, that's I think here we're having a dialogue, correct? Because there is cooperation by all the people. If there is no cooperation, then we're just saying nonsense words, and there is not room for dialogue. And cooperation and respect are the main pillars for a correct dialogue, because yeah, you can name it dialogue, you can name it whatever you want, but if you want to have a correct dialogue, I think cooperation and respect are the pillars.
Absolutely. I mean, I think dialogue is all about like the intention of the participants, and like realizing that this is the space where you can like reveal thoughts that kind of were buried underneath in the back of your mind, and make those connections with other people who are also undergoing that same process. So I think, understanding dialogue as a process that requires dedication is important.
I'm not going to engage in a reflection about Dialogos because that's sort of my job and I'm doing it all the time. Instead, I'm going to reflect on what's happened here. I was really impressed and deeply encouraged. So that's what I'll say from my reflection.
Yeah, thank you, John. It was a very good conversation, and thank you to all of you. I really enjoyed this, and John, would love to have you on again in the future if you're up for it at some point. But yeah, thank you all for your time.
Of course, I'll come back if you want.
Yeah, great, and you can pick the topic as well.
Okay.
All right, and yeah, thank you all for your time, and I will see you later. Bye.
If possible, I just want to say one more thank you to John real quick. I've been listening to Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, episode 50, outside on my lounge chair, and I popped up a notification that said like, oh yeah, John Vervaeke is streaming live Gen Z Changemakers. So when I clicked on that, I saw Madison and Shabu speaking, and that's what showed me what Civics Unplugged was.
Oh,
the way I learned about Civics Unplugged was through you. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're really welcome. Glad to hear that. Thanks, everyone. Take good care.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe.
Bye.